Alhamdulillah, nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayhi wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lahu wa man yudlilhu fala hadiya lahu wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa Allah wahdahu la sharika lahu wa nashhadu anna sayyidina wa sanadina wa shafi'ana Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu amma ba'd. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والذين هم للزكاة فاعلون صدق الله العظيم اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على عبدك ورسولك سيدنا محمد النبي الأمي وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين كما صليت وباركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. The next topic we have, inshallah, is on zakat. Having covered the pillars of iman and salah and hajj in some way, I now, inshallah, turn to zakat. Zakat, the root of this word, is very related to the same root as the word tazkiyah. And so zakah and tazkiyah, it's a form of purification. Often it is described as purification of one's wealth, and that is correct. And it's also purification of oneself from one's wealth. So let me explain both of these things. The first concept, purification of one's wealth, is that whenever a person upon whom zakat is fard, reaches that level of income, assets, savings, which is a particular amount, and you have to have that amount for 1 lunar year. Once you have that amount for 1 lunar year, it is viewed as extra. And it's interesting, the word for this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses in the Quran, fadl, also is a word that refers to the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the generosity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And part of His grace and generosity, subhanahu wa ta'ala, on many human beings is that He gives them surplus wealth, surplus income. And so Islam is a particular way it understands what surplus is. And anybody who has that surplus income, which is to have a certain amount in terms of your cash, gold, silver, investment assets, etc., in the olden days, there would also be livestock, etc. For 1 year, they're considered, as far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as far as the Sharia, as far as Islamic law and ethics, that they have surplus. Now, why am I stressing it like this? They themselves may not feel that they have surplus. And this is part of, the materialistic nature of our age and of our nafs, is that we have a lot, but we don't realize we have a lot. And this is also partly due to our lack of compassion for those who do not have. And this is precisely one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala obligated us to pay zakat, so we could purify ourselves of this materialism and we could purify ourselves of this lack of compassion. Maybe not entire lack of compassion, but insufficient compassion for those who are needy. So it's very important to understand. And let me clarify the legal aspects of this a little bit. Sometimes, people often like to ask the question that, you see, I have this money and I'm saving it. Let's say I'm planning to save it for the next 10 years because I want to pay for, let's say, the college education of my children, or I'm saving up to buy a house. There can be many, many reasons why a person is saving. Now, understand, savings in Islam is completely permissible. But the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you in such a way that you have surplus income and wealth, such that you can save for at least 1 lunar year, immediately means that the poor, the needy, the destitute have a right, a very small right, 1/40th, 2.5% on that savings. And as soon as that right takes place, as soon as that zakat becomes fard, obligatory on you, now it is fard for you to pay that zakat And if you don't do that, and until you do that, it's like a dain, it's like a debt, a liability you're carrying. So one meaning of this word purification, when it's used for zakat, is I'm purifying my wealth of this debt and liability, in the sense that I'm making my wealth pure, because now that one lunar year has passed and I have so much surplus and savings, now there's the rights of some others on this wealth. And until I fulfill their rights by paying this zakat, donating this zakat, my wealth won't be pure. So it's very important that we realize that even if you're saving for a house, even if you're saving for college education, even if you're saving for Hajj, all right, that's maybe the best example I can give. Even if you're saving for Fard Hajj, if you hold that surplus wealth and income for one lunar year or more, zakat, you must donate 2.5% of that in zakat. Now you should not worry, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put blessing in that wealth. I would argue very strongly, with absolute yaqeen and certainty, because this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, that He increases every kind of sadaqah, which includes zakat. So were you, for example, to be saving up for Hajj, Fard Hajj, the first time you're going on Hajj, there's more to that to make it Fard, but your obligatory Hajj, if you were to pay the zakat, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put so much barakah, blessing in your future rizq, that inshallah you will be able to save up for that Hajj faster. And when you go for that Hajj, you will go using wealth which was purified by such so that it no longer has the debts and liabilities owed to others. So it's very important to understand this legal aspect. In fact, now let me take it one step further, relating this to a theme that I've been trying to use in all these pillars, is the aspect of zuhud. So the reality is that all this money that I may have saved, the truth is, I don't, at one level, like at a meta level, I don't have any right to any of this. This is all Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's rizq that He has given me. This is actually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, that He is saying that 40th, right, 97.5% will stay with me, and only 2.5% should go to those who are poor and needy. So it's very important that we change our attitude. And I know it, and this is also a very good way to see how materialistic our nafs is, because we don't realize that. It's perfectly fine, again, to save and plan and invest, etc. But if the thought, the idea of giving zakat pinches, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has used this phrase in Quran, وَمَنْ يُوكَ شُحَّ نَفْسِهِ. So shuh is that pinch, that greed, that sense, that reluctance, hesitancy, almost remorse and regret at having to part with one's money. Allahu Akbar Kabira. And this is also a reason why one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put an extra type of sadaqah, which is in addition to zakat, in the month of Ramadan, which is called sadaqatul fitr. Again, a person who meets that requirement should pay. It's a very nominal amount, right? It's literally just a few dollars in some countries, $10 to $15 at best in other countries. Okay. Another aspect of the purification of zakat is the ability to part from your wealth. So this is what I was trying to get at. To realize that actually this isn't mine. I shouldn't be so attached to it. I shouldn't be so fond of it. I shouldn't be so in love with it. All right. Another aspect of the purification is to have that compassion for the poor and the needy. And that's why, to the maximum extent possible, a person should try to donate their zakah in a very dynamic, personalized way. What do I mean? So it's very impersonal to just send the bank transfer. And many times, many of us, myself included, I've had to just do that. But it's preferable and it's more beneficial for the purification of one's nafs that if a person goes out in the field, meets the poor, maybe feeds the poor, literally, or volunteers some time. This is in addition to the monetary donation of the zakat, but to be part of that effort. Otherwise, what happens for a lot of us, especially in this materialist, postmodern, whatever phrase you want, adjective you want to use of this world, we live in silos. We live in enclaves. We live in isolation from people who are of a lower income than we are. And that's one of the major reasons why we don't feel that compassion. And that's one of the beautiful things about Ramadan, especially in the Muslim world, is, I suppose anywhere, the masjid, whether the Muslim world or Muslim minorities in non-Muslim countries, the masjid is the place where all the socioeconomic classes gather. And the real gathering is the one of salah, right? There's something to be said about having iftar at home with your family, but occasionally also having iftar with the community. But that was the place where you would encounter. And traditionally, by the way, the madrasa was also a place where you would encounter people of a wide range of socioeconomic classes, not like the majority of madaris today, which unfortunately, the middle class and the upper class neglect to send their children to the institutes of Islamic learning. So this feeling of compassion with the poor, that is the purpose of zakat, is realized more when a person becomes a volunteer worker, dynamic, in relief and humanitarian and social work, even if it's just standing there and distributing food packets. And this is, or in Western countries, people have these sort of, try feeding food drives or food kitchens, etc., etc. Now look at the verse that I recited in the beginning. So that is from Surah Al-Mu'minun, Surah number 23. So in this surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala begins by enumerating the qualities, sifat of the believers. And in verse number 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed in Quran al-Kareem, وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. So fa'ilun, fa'il, they're dynamically active. In other places, and you would have all seen this in the Quran, it comes repeatedly, وَآتَوْا الزَّكَاةِ, that they offer the zakat. It's a light verb, right? Even the letters, hamza, ta, ata, right? Here it's fa'ilun. They're regularly, it's a fi'l, it's a regular dynamic act that they do and they persist on. And this is the level of mu'mineen, this is their attitude towards zakat. And I think that's important because many of us are a bit lax in zakat. In fact, for some of us, it has to be Ramadan. Ramadan comes and then all of a sudden we remember that, I have to give zakat. Fa'ilun means that they are not regularly giving their zakah, and they're actively, one way I would interpret this is that they're actively seeking the best ways and best places and most beneficial people, most needy people in which they can give their zakah. It's a very dynamic thing. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. So in the month of Ramadan, and it's not at all in any way necessary or preferred to give zakah in the month of Ramadan. Some people do it for this reason, because of something we had mentioned in the earlier talks, that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa wasallam said that the reward for a fard act is multiplied 70 times, but the best way to give zakat is what the jurists, the fuqaha, have labeled al-fawl al-fuqara, that which is most beneficial for the poor. And in terms of sort of economics, it is not the most beneficial for them if all charity is concentrated in 1 month. So that's why. So one way, one advantage of the modern time, one way you can combine both of these two principles is that in the month of Ramadan, you set up a monthly donation deduction from your bank account for some authentic Islamic charity. And so because you made that niyyah of that year-long charity in Ramadan, inshallah you will get the 70 times reward for that fard act. But at the same time, the dispersal, the distribution of your zakat will be spread over the whole year. And then you will also get the reward of fa'ilun, of dynamically trying to think and plan and design your zakat donation in a way that it's best for the poor, such that you distribute it throughout the year. Right? So this is one example. And actually what I'm doing right now is also trying to sort of demonstrate each and every one of us is going to be in different circumstances, different amounts of zakat that we have to pay. We may have connections and contacts and trust and reliance on different Islamic charities in different communities, in different countries. Each and every one of us should think and make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and pray salatul istikhara to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then dynamically try to give our zakah. And after giving our zakat, beg Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept that zakat as a means of the eradication of all poverty from all humanity. Because that's the next thing I want to mention. And those of you who listen to me have heard me talk about this before. That this is the power of zakat. And I think that zakat in many ways has been the most underemphasized, under-realized pillar of the 5 pillars of Islam. Because Islam, Deen of Islam, Sharia is doing a dawah, is making a huge claim that zakat, the institution of zakat, in of itself is sufficient to eradicate poverty in the world. And as an ummah, we failed. If we had all as an ummah paid our zakat and also distributed that in the most strategic and best manner, in a way of proper income distribution and empowerment and upliftment of those who are not lucky or fortunate enough to have income, and if we had uplifted so many out of poverty, it would have been a huge dawah to the world that this is a system. Whereas no system, capitalism has not eliminated poverty, communism has not eliminated poverty, the United Nations and the World Health Organization, etc., Oxfam, many of them are doing wonderful work, but they have not eliminated poverty. So, khair, all of us, at least as individuals, if unfortunately the ummah is lacking in its collective effort, so when that happens, we make our individual effort and we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, Ya Allah, I am giving my own individual zakah, but I make dua to you to bless the ummah, to guide the ummah, and to make all the many individuals in the world who are giving the zakat, let that have the effect that would have been obtained had the entire collectivity of the whole ummah given their zakat. Alright, then the other aspect of purification I was mentioning was that it purifies ourself, right? It purifies ourself from that materialism. It purifies ourself from that hesitation. It purifies ourself from that lack of compassion, or let's say, less compassion than we should have. When you're thinking about this concept of zuhud, right? And I'm gonna take it one step further. And now I'm gonna say at the outset, zakat is fard. What I'm about to talk about now is not fard. It's not mandatory. It's not obligatory. But if you look at all of the pillars, right, there's the notion of going beyond the fard. So let's take a step back. In salah, there's the fard salah. But all of you know, if you pray the fard salah regularly, it's inevitable, it's natural that you will develop in your heart a thirst and desire to pray more salah. And that's why in the Islamic texts and teachings, there are many, many extra salah, nawafil, fancy English word, supererogatory, right? There's the extra sunnahs, and then there's the optional, so there's the sort of emphasized sunnahs, there's the optional sunnahs, there's the pure nawafil such as awabin, duha, ishraq, tahajjud, etc. Right? Tahiyatul masjid, tahiyatul wudu, there's so many. Salatul tasbih, which is an authentic salah, salatul hajjah, salatul istikhara. Just like that, in Ramadan, in terms of the fasting. So there's the fard fast in the month of Ramadan, and there's extra fasts. Some which have been emphasized in the Sunnah, like the 6 days of Shawwal, the Ayam-e-Bid, the 13th, 14th, 15th of the lunar month, Mondays and Thursdays, the days of Dhul-Hijjah, Ashura, etc. Just like that, that there's a fard Hajj. But beyond that, there is, and some of the ulama were of the position that actually going on Umrah once is wajib, but that's another discussion. But beyond that, extra Umrahs, extra tawafs, right? So what do you think? Do you think that fasting is going to have the obligatory and the extra Prayer is going to have the obligatory and the extra. Hajj, pilgrimage, has the obligatory and the extra. And what is zakat not going to have the extra? So that extra is normally, now in common terms, people use the word zakat for what is fard and sadaqah for what is optional. But in reality, sadaqah is the whole spectrum. Within that, the fard sadaqah is called zakat. And there's also like a wajib sadaqah, which is sadaqatul fitr, and can also be sometimes an expiation for breaking an oath, etc. Other things, fidya, other types of monetary donations. But then there's the optional, right? So let's call it a sadaqatul nafila, the optional charity. So we should want to, just like in Ramadan, alhamdulillah, we are trying to pray optional prayers. And we already mentioned last time or the time before that we would love, and it would be our dream to do an optional non-fard umrah in the month of Ramadan. Because remember, Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said that a person who does umrah in Ramadan will get the reward of Hajj, or as if they did Hajj with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that means in Ramadan, in the field of sadaqah, there should also be extra optional charity. And Ramadan is a wonderful time for that as well, because when you do an optional act in Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the reward and the qurb and the nearness and intimate pleasure that He offers for that, as if you have done a fard. Now when you do optional sadaqah, that's even more purification. And you would remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran al-Kareem that you should give from that which you love, right? So that may be taken quantitatively, that give voluntary charity such that you slightly pinch your financial planning. So when you did your financial planning, you thought that, okay, and you included zakat in that and everything else, and then you had your savings or investments or whatever left over, and then you thought, okay, yeah, I can give, let's say $10 more in charity. So give a little bit more than that. Why? Because that the part that you were planning to keep for yourself is the part that you love. So give a little, even if you just give $1, literally, at least you lived up amal on that ayah, that I'm giving a part of what I love away, right? What you love has also been taken to mean, certain properties or assets. Like back in the day, if somebody had a flock of 100 goats and there was one particular goat, right, who they really liked. Yeah, and me and you don't have these things, but back in the day when people used to be shepherds, they probably became fond of 1 or 2 goats. So give that one away or slaughter that one, offered as a udhiya, as a qurbani for the sake and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Or if you were giving clothes away for the poor, so fine, give the clothes that you don't wear anymore, not because, don't give something that's spoiled, but you don't wear it anymore, maybe you don't like it, maybe it doesn't fit anymore, etc. But then let's say you have your 5 favorite sweaters, give one of your favorite sweaters away, right? Once upon a time I told a story to some of you about one of my favorite sweaters, right? I didn't give it away, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took it away. Allahu Akbar. So, and that's a lesson for us, right? So what type of purification is that? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that you should give from that which you love? Because actually in reality, you shouldn't be loving anything material. You should only be loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or any aspect of makhluk creation, lillah, fillah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what happens here, now listen to this carefully, is when you give away part of what you love, you're giving away all of the love for ghairullah. That's your niyyah, that's your intention. So Ya Allah, I'm going to give $10 extra away from that part of money I was really saving for myself, and I was so happy. Let's say I saved $1,000. So I'm going to give $10 of that away. But what I also want to give away, so I'm only giving part of the $1,000 away, $10, but I want to give away all the love I have for this $1,000 away. Ya Allah, accept my giving these $10 away and have, make it have the effect that it helps me give all my love for the whole $1,000, including the $990 that I'm keeping. I want to give my love for that away. Why? Because I only want to have love for you. I want to have love for you in your name, for your sake, and what you love. Right? And that should be very clear. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not have love for material assets. Right? Yes, Allah ta'ala has blessed us with them. Allah ta'ala is al-Razaq. But the material assets themselves are not mahbub in the law. They're not beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I remember, one of these wise people, and I don't know their name, but somebody from classical or late classical times said that you should learn to look at the dunya in the same way, with the same gaze, with the same perspective that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks at the dunya. And they were talking about the material aspect of this world. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Quran, Kul mata'ad dunya qaleel, that proclaim to them Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wasallam that all of the stuff of the dunya is just qaleel. It is infinitesimal. It is trifling. So you should view the entire, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala views the entire dunya like that, we should view our dunya, whatever we have amassed, legitimately earned, lawfully earned, but it is our dunya, we should also view that as qaleel, as a trifling. I'll tell you this, that the people who view their dunya as qaleel, they realize the kathir, azim, fadl that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given them. And those people who view their earnings and assets and investments and properties and homes and cars and deeds and etc. as great, you'd be shocked many times they cannot even appreciate the bounties and blessings Allah Ta'ala has given them, or they view it as few. Na'udhu billah, they view it as qaleel, and they're upset that why didn't they get this also, or why didn't they get that also, or why did so-and-so get that, which they didn't get. And that is the reality. That the fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His rahmah and mercy and grace upon us, that He even remembered us when He was apportioning rizq, that is kathir. And whatever rizq He has given us, it's just qaleel. So in this month of Ramadan, we should, inshallah, also, especially those of us who have some farz zakah outstanding on us, because whenever you come to that realization, it's best to give that ASAP. So if you come to that realization in Ramadan, so be it. But then also, as I mentioned, to try to plan and distribute that charity over the year so that it is of maximum benefit to the poor, but also to make a lot of dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For what? For the feelings of zakah, for the purification of zakah, to understand the haqiqah, the reality of zakah. And sometimes you can just make mutlaq dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala like that Ya Allah, everything, every wisdom, every hikmah, every guidance, every hidayah that you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, have embedded in this shar'i act of zakah, Ya Allah, I'm offering my zakat now. Please accept this offering from me and fill my heart with all of the feelings that you wish me to have. Fill my heart with all of the purification that you intended for me to have from your hidayah when you established this obligation to pay zakat in Deen of Islam. And then you'll give it happily. You'll give it joyously. وَالَّذِينَ هُمْ لِلزَّكَاةِ فَاعِلُونَ. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us tawfiq to learn the ahkam and the legal rulings, at least as pertains to our zakat. And may Allah ta'ala guide us to donate that zakat in a timely manner. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala enable each and every one of us to donate that zakat in a way that is best for the poor. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept that donation as a means of purification of Tazkiyah. Wa akhir da'wana an alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.